morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the world's most exciting classroom event. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I'll be your host for today. We have a little bit of catching up to do. We didn't catch up with the Oosterschelde and the DARWIN200 team last week because it was March break or spring break for some classrooms in the US. So many classrooms across Canada, classrooms in the US were out last week. So we took a little break as well. So let's catch up on where the ship is right now. Give me just one moment here to pop it up. There we go. And we can see our beautiful map here. And you can see another ocean is disappearing in our wake. So we left the Falklands a few weeks ago. We had a very fast sail to South Georgia. Let me zoom in there on South Georgia a little bit. We connected with Josh from South Georgia as they were sailing along the coast to a new location where they were going to hit an area with about 1 million king penguins, which is pretty cool. I have a little bit of video from that I'm going to share for you. And then the ship continued its journey. We are making our way to a new continent. You can see Africa here coming up on the horizon. South Africa and Cape Town is our next destination. So I wouldn't be surprised if we're about maybe a week or so away. I'm sure when we talk to Grant, he can fill us in a little bit more. So there we are. That's where we are in the world. Let's take a quick look here. Let's pop up some photos. Let's see what we got. What's new here? Oh, it's kind of cool. That looks like some big seas, some big waves. They're sailing on there. Let's grab the next group. Looks like a little lesson going on here. Learning about using a sextant. Okay, so navigation without using the fancy GPS system. And looks like there's a couple video clips here. Let's take a look at one or two of these. All right, we can hear the wind, we see the wave. And let's grab one more here before we bring Grant in. All right, definitely windy weather. We'll talk about that. Very cool. Okay, I'm going to come back from that screen share and I'm going to bring Grant in. Grant is pretty much our resident scientist on board. He's been on most legs of the journey. Let's get Grant in here. Hey, Grant, how are you?
Hi, everybody. Doing great. We've got a calm day for sailing.
Yeah, it looks like since you left South Georgia, it looks like you had a few rough days.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want to fool you with these like tranquil seas behind me. We had some days where we were really surfing.
Yeah, very cool. Well, Grant, it's been a while since we've caught up because before this leg, we had a massive 7-week crossing of the Pacific Ocean. So it's been a while since you've been on board. It's good to see you.
Yeah. It's been good to be back. Get back into the swing of doing all the bird surveys and everything.
Yeah, very cool. And so, yeah, that's one of the big roles you have is basically this global bird survey as we sail around the world. I think you were saying we're approaching 600 species. That's pretty special.
Yeah, so 600 species, and that's 600 species that we've counted over a series of it's been 900 hour-long counts that I've conducted so far.
Wow.
So all that is this raw data that we're contributing for the scientific community.
Yeah, very cool. I should mention as well, I think I still have the map here. If you check out the map at darwin200.com in your classroom, there's a little bird icon. And if you click on that, it highlights some of the list that Grant has made as the ship sailed around the world. So that's pretty cool. You can check out some of the observations as the ship was making its way around the world. They kind of show up as these glowing patches throughout those parts of the journey. And Grant, you've also been working on your own project out on some of those islands in the Pacific.
Yeah, that's right. So I'm not sure if anybody remembers, but we were in French Polynesia last year, and I was able to organize and get funding to do my own documentary project on some of the rare animals that are on some of those islands in French Polynesia. So I've been working this leg on trying to get everything together so that the documentary is ready for viewing.
All right. And it just so happens you sent me a little trailer for some of the work you've been doing.
Yeah, I'd love to show it off. It's a beautiful trailer.
All right. Give me a moment here to get the video queued up. make sure I pick the right video, and then let's take a look at this little trailer so far. Here it is.
Surrounded by dense jungle and vibrant birds, you'd be forgiven for thinking that I'm in a rainforest somewhere. But here, in one of the most remote corners of the Pacific, I couldn't be farther away from the nearest continental landmass. Stretching across an area larger than Western Europe, the Tuamotu tropical forest spans the largest chain of coral islands in the world. This creates a unique ecosystem. But how did these islands come to be? And how did they become home to such a unique cast of plants and animals? Finally, how have these island communities been shaped by the forces of evolution and extinction? Although it's easy to imagine that these islands are untouched paradises, in reality, they face severe environmental challenges. From the introduction of alien species to the industrial scale exploitation of resources, and even the wholesale destruction of entire islands. Against such odds, the survival of the Tuamotu forest is far from assured. In this two-part film, join us as we explore this forgotten world. How we're gonna get there, I don't exactly know yet. And we meet the fascinating creatures that call it home. This is Tuamotu.
All right, Grant, that's looking pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a project that I'm super proud of. I'm so happy that we were able to get it off the ground. It was kind of my little idea, and then we went to these islands to film some of these animals that even biologists know almost nothing about. And so trying to give these little islands and this like overshadowed ecosystem a little bit of a spotlight.
Yeah. And I love that drone shot. It's a pretty epic drone shot of you on the island and then pulling back just to give a little bit of perspective. And then, islands are pretty unique across the Pacific, and the way that birds move from island to island, and then they can change and evolve. Do you want to maybe talk a little bit about that process?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's definitely one of the big themes of this film, is about how islands are sort of laboratories for evolution. It's often pure chance that especially land birds and a lot of land animals will make their way to remote islands. And when they get there, the way that they kind of associate with other types of animals and plants, and they build a complex ecosystem in the middle of the ocean, is something that I find really fascinating, and that's definitely a big part of the story that we're trying to tell.
Excellent. Well, we can't wait to see the finished two-part film. That's going to be pretty great. I know you're probably pretty busy right now. I think you mentioned scripting earlier. I'm
Right.
sure there's a lot of editing going on. Yeah, huge undertaking, but I bet it's going to feel pretty good when it's done.
Yeah, absolutely. It's shaping up to be 2 45-minute episodes, so it's a big project.
Yeah. So before we let you go, Grant, I'm going to just invite our classrooms. We have classrooms tuning in online. Don't be shy. If you have any questions for Grant about the bird survey, life on the ship, visiting South Georgia, feel free to put some in the chat. If you are a camera classroom and you have a question for Grant, just give me a wave at the camera, and that'll be my signal to bring you in for a little question. But just before we do that, Grant, I want to share a few photos you sent to me today. So let's take a look at, I think there's 6 photos, and then we will check for some questions from our classrooms. So let's grab those photos. And first one here should come up now. There we go. Looks like you had a visitor.
Yeah, so this is it's the smallest kind of seabird. It's called a storm petrel. And one of these days that we were sailing around South Georgia, we had just crazy winds that we were fighting against. And this little storm petrel happened to be blown right into one of our sails. And so when that happened, the storm petrel fell to the deck. And because these guys, they really can't take off directly from bare ground, it needed a little assistance getting off the ship. So we got a chance to snap a couple of photos.
Yeah, very cool. That's not the only visitor. Your ship being out there, it's kind of a little beacon for birds that might need a little bit of a rest. I think I've seen boobies. I think you might have had really early on in the expedition a wren taking a little break on the ship. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's always exciting.
All right, and there's that story. Is that the same storm petrel?
That's a different one, but just for reference of
Sure.
what they kind of look like on the waves.
Okay. And then there we go. There's our second biggest penguins.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. They were so cool. One of the fun things about the penguins on South Georgia is that they tell you that you're supposed to keep a distance of 10 meters from all of the wildlife. And it's funny because you'll go onto the beaches and all of the wildlife comes right up to you. It's absolutely impossible to remain or to keep that kind of distance. And the penguins especially were so curious. They would just come up and check you out, and they really just try to see what's going on there.
Yeah, I think you guys get the rules, but the wildlife definitely doesn't get those rules in places, especially on islands like obviously South Georgia. Galapagos is very similar. Very cool.
Absolutely.
Here's a scavenger bird, right? These guys are predators too.
Yeah, so these guys, a lot of people call them the vultures of the ocean. This is a giant petrel, and they like to hang around penguin colonies in case there are any deaths or any kind of weak animals. And then these guys seize the opportunity.
All right, fur seals.
Yeah. Oh my God. I don't know if you've heard Josh talk about these, but the fur seals, especially the really young ones, are really bold. They like to kind of show off how tough they are. And so again, with the whole 10-meter thing, the fur seals charge up to people and will just start snarling and everything and want to make a big display. And then you have to shoo them away so that they don't bite you. So you have to start clapping your hands and, saying, no, you don't, and be big and threatening to then chase the baby fur seals away. And so that's another thing that's just pretty wild that I think will always stay with me is that feeling of being pursued by a bunch of baby fur seals.
All right. And so this is pretty much what makes me the most jealous of everything so far. I can't believe you got to see this.
That was crazy. So we had all of the researchers. There were 40 researchers in Grytviken, and everybody was crowding around this leopard seal, which beached itself on South Georgia there, because I guess this is a relatively rare site that they get to see in South Georgia. I said there are people that have been working on South Georgia at Grytviken for the last year, and they've never seen a leopard seal before. So it was pretty exciting.
Yeah, these are dinosaur-looking predators. They are penguin menaces. I mean, they are pretty cool. Usually around Antarctica, so that was pretty special.
Absolutely. And this one was it was a younger individual. It was about 7 feet long, but that's a baby leopard seal.
Yeah, Yeah. Wow.
Oh, and then I think here we've got a prion. So prions are probably one of the most abundant birds that we've been seeing on this leg. They're small seabirds, and they're super cool because most prions have these little filaments in their beaks that are almost like the bristles on a toothbrush. And much like the way that whales are filtering water to get krill, these guys are filtering water to filter out small invertebrates that they're eating, like especially like little like shrimp like copepods and things like that, just really tiny animals. And so around South Georgia especially, there's big upwellings of marine nutrients, and that leads to these big blooms of zooplankton, and that's what is feeding like just flocks of thousands and thousands of these prions. We saw so many of them.
All right, and then that little landscape photo here.
Well, and I think especially for me, like the icebergs were one of the most fun things. You know, getting to sail around so many icebergs of all different shapes and sizes. I had fun just like commenting on like sort of like the artistic quality of each iceberg with some of the guests. We were kind of like rating and coming up with what the museum descriptions would be for different icebergs. Like some of them were like, you know, more cubist, and some of them were, you know, a little bit more triangular. But it was super fun getting to see so many icebergs.
Okay, that's the end of our photos, but I want to play one little clip that Josh sent me to highlight our penguins. So let me pull that up here, and then we're going to go to a little Q&A action before we let you go. Gold Harbor, here we go. All right, so what are we figuring? About 1 million penguins?
So in Gold Harbor, it's one of the largest. It's one of the 4 largest colonies on South Georgia. This was about like 60,000 king penguins, but it's so many. The largest colony on South Georgia was at I think it was called St. Andrews Bay, which had about 500,000 pairs. So,
wow.
Or I think it's 500,000 individuals. But not all of the birds, elephant seals, those guys were absolutely enormous.
There's our little fur seals.
Gen 2 penguins as well. The Gen 2 penguins were definitely a lot less bold than the kings. They wouldn't come up to you, and they were kind of just like minding their own business.
Wow. It's like a bustling little city there. Very cool. Okay, well, let's grab
so much going on. I think all. So sorry.
No, don't worry, Grant. I think there's a slight delay too.
Of course. I think all of us were just really stricken by stepping off of the boat onto the beach there in Gold Harbor, and just like it felt like we were, you know, in the middle of like, you know, a bustling Serengeti or something like that. You know, just getting to see all these different animals interacting with each other, and just to see like such sheer abundance in one place. It was also just a spectacular scene. I mean, there were glaciers coming right up onto the beach, and like waterfalls coming down from the glaciers, and the sun was setting over the glaciers, like, you know, glinting like all of the ice, and like it was really a spectacular sight.
Wow, awesome, so cool. Let's get a few questions in. So from Seven Oaks Prep in the UK, they would like to know your favorite bird so far and why.
Ooh, my favorite bird so far would probably be similar to one of the birds that was in the film, the trailer that I showed. So I don't know if you guys noticed the little green pigeon-like bird that was at the very beginning. That's a bird that they live on tropical islands in the Pacific. They're called fruit doves. I think the fruit doves that we've seen have probably been some of my favorite birds.
All right. We are going to bring in a couple camera groups. We in Hamilton, we have Miss Colburn's crew hanging out with us. Let me bring in Miss Colburn. They're a virtual crew. Hey, Miss Colburn.
Hi, good morning. Good morning.
Hi,
How are
good
you?
morning.
Good morning, Grant. It's great to see you. And you know what? You do have a perfect day for this hit, don't you?
Oh, really? I mean, like we couldn't have asked for better weather for a live stream.
Unbelievable. So we have Zed is one of our students. He's going to put on his mic and ask a couple of questions. And then if we have time, we have Alexis who would like to ask you a question too. Okay?
Absolutely.
All right. Go ahead, Zed.
Okay. My question is, what would happen if you ran out of fuel and you do not find for fuel? what would you guys do like normally?
Just to confirm that I understood, is it if we ran out of fuel? Is that the question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we try to use the fuel that we have on board as little as possible. So whenever there's a good day for sailing, we're always trying to sail and keep like our fuel consumption minimal. But there's plenty of fuel on board for if in the weird case that we had to motor the entire way from port A to port B, we could do that without needing to resupply.
All right. I think you got one more there for us.
Yeah. Second question is from John at Dalewood. His question is that what is the worst or the most challenging part of your journey?
The worst or the most challenging part? That's an interesting question. I think one of the hardest things for me for being at sea for so long is it's pretty rare that you get a full night of sleep. The ship is kind of always moving around. You're always kind of being jostled in your bed a little bit. And so, usually you like to sleep during the night without being woken up many times. And that's something that usually isn't a reality at sea.
Thank you. Thanks, Grant. That's great.
All right.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Ms. Coburn.
Thank you for the questions.
Miss Abel's crew's hanging out with us in Ontario. How are we doing?
Good. We've got one question here. Zaid, you can come in.
Perfect.
Ask your question.
Have you seen anything bigger than like a leopard seal? Like way
We've
bigger,
seen
like-
whales. We've seen a variety of whales. Just on this, you know what? We've seen the largest living organism on Earth. Ever. We saw blue whales last year about the same time.
Awesome.
That's pretty cool, right?
Very cool. Thanks for the question. I'm going to give one more here, Grant. This is another one online. This is Miss Lightburn's crew. I believe they're out on the East Coast, I think Nova Scotia. And they're wondering if on this journey, the DARWIN200, if any new species have been discovered.
You know what? We have not really been going through and surveying, looking for new species. Actually, you know what? I'm so sorry. Jut Wayne had a project in Pitcairn. No, in Mangareva. Sorry, it's been a little while. But in Mangareva, he was looking in caves, looking at these little canoe bugs and looking at these little small invertebrates in the caves. And I think that he's working on the publication, but I do think that there were new species that he was describing during that work in Mangareva.
You're absolutely right. He was with us, Rapa Nui, Pitcairn, and Mangareva. And we don't have an exact number yet, but I think as we get closer to the end of the journey, we might have some cool announcements to make, because I think there was definitely some new to science, new species found, which is really, really cool. So a cool legacy of the DARWIN200 as well.
Absolutely. I see another one about surprising behaviors with the leopard seal in the chat.
Yeah.
I think one of the cool things with that is that the leopard seal was opening its mouth and yawning pretty constantly. And we got a lot of great photos showing off the different teeth morphologies that leopard seals have. So in the front, they have teeth that are much more like a dog and kind of sharp and pointed and everything. But in the back, their teeth actually have several grooves in them. And they almost look like, if you imagine a cartoon of a Christmas tree. And that's because a lot of seals, leopard seals including, while they'll eat animals and fish sometimes, they can also switch gears and filter out krill. Grab big gobfuls of water and then blow out all the water and keep small little invertebrates in there, and digest those. And so it's cool that we were able to see that and talk about that weird bit of behavior that even massive predators like leopard seals sometimes will eat just these really, really small organisms.
All right. Shout out to Alexis for that great question. Final question for you, Grant. This is from our group in the UK. And they're wondering, what do you think might be the rarest bird you came across on one of the islands?
That's a really good question. I think one of the rarest birds that we've probably seen was there was a type of fruit dove that we saw in Bora Bora. I think it was in Bora Bora, where this fruit dove is one that there hadn't been photos of this dove for over 10 years. And I think like it had fewer than about 1,000 observations online that I could find. And this is a dove that, you know, the total global population of the species is probably lower than 1,000.
Wow.
And so that was pretty cool to get to see one of those.
Yeah. Well, Grant, you are having an incredible experience. I know in the birding community, it's called lifer when you see a new bird species. And I have no doubt that you've racked up quite a few of those. What an experience. The research you've been able to do, the video coming out. Pretty cool, Grant. I can't wait to see how it all comes together.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Grant, so good to see you. Have a great rest of the journey to Cape Town. And if you're hanging around there for a bit, maybe I'll see you in a few weeks.
Absolutely. Take care, everybody.
All right. Thanks, Grant.
See ya.
All right. Very cool to catch up with Grant out there in the Atlantic. They are getting pretty close to Cape Town. Definitely a few more days to go, but pretty soon we will hit a new continent, which is great. Now, we have a small change in plans for today. We were originally going to connect again with Andres B. Haida aboard his little boat, the sailboat Barba, little research vessel, and they're up in the other part of the world, the northern polar region in Norway. Unfortunately, they were wrapping the expedition a little bit early, so we're not going to have that connection today. I did talk to him yesterday, and they saw some great stuff over the last few days. We connected with them maybe 2 weeks ago, and we had a connection with Josh down in South Georgia and Andres up in the Arctic Norway, which was pretty cool to connect those two ships on the other side of the world. But the coolest video that he showed me yesterday was a sperm whale. So he jumped in the water with his little scooter and was racing along next to a sperm whale and then dove down with it as it disappeared into the dark water, which was pretty cool. But what we're going to do today instead is share a little expedition that I was on a few years ago in the Pacific Ocean. And this was a research ship I was on called the Nautilus. And we spent 3 weeks using robots to dive and explore parts of the ocean in the deep sea, 3-4 kilometers deep, that no one has ever seen before. So we were the first people to see it. And we broadcast it live to the world while we were exploring these new parts of the ocean. So that's what I want to share with you today. And then, of course, there'll be some time for questions. So I'm going to bring up a presentation here. I'm going to switch it onto my second screen like that. And then you should see it pop up on your screen in just a moment. There we go. Perfect. Let's go full screen. And then, of course, I'll make sure I save some time for questions as well. There we go. So let's get into it. I met the ship in California, in San Francisco. Now, I love to scuba dive. So I came early so I could do a little bit of scuba diving. And off the coast of California, you have these cold, nutrient-rich waters, and forests grow underwater. They're called kelp forests. And I spent a little bit of time diving in these forests. They're full of life. These kelp can grow, these kelp plants, you know, over 30 feet. Some of them can grow as much as 1 meter in a day. So they are very, very fast growing plants. Here's a little video clip to show you what it's like in the kelp forest. Whoops, that didn't play. I think I might have to hit play. There we go. So there's myself on the right and my friend diving with me. We have a National Geographic flag down there because we're both National Geographic explorers. And this is just a little clip of us in that kelp forest. Also, right off of the kelp forest, you get some of the biggest trees on the planet. You get these amazing redwoods. So it was really neat to dive in a forest underwater and then go for a walk in a forest on land. And then even better than that, there's still more to check out on the land. Right where the ocean meets the water, when the tide goes in and out, you get these tide pools. So when the tide goes out, all of this marine life is stuck in these little pools waiting for the water to come back in. So at this point, this was a night search through the tide pools. So it gotten dark, the tide went out, and we went out in our hip waders to see what was in these tide pools. And so here we found this crab. There's some beautiful colored sea anemones here hanging out in the tide pools. Of course, there are sea stars like this bat star that you can see here, this really cool purple color. This one is right out of the water. So the water's gone down so far that this sea star is on the rock outside of the water. More crab species here. You can see some gastropods or snails, those little black kind of circles with the little white circles on top. And then coolest of all, we found this little baby octopus crawling through the little bits of seaweed here. So tiny little, let me get a little closer here. Tiny little baby octopus crawling through the seaweed here in this little tide pool. So that was pretty neat to see. But I couldn't goof around too much. I had to get into the city, into San Francisco. You can see here, San Francisco. And I had to find the ship. I had to find the exploration vessel Nautilus. So this ship is Bob Ballard's ship. I don't know if anybody knows who Bob Ballard is. He's a famous oceanographer. He's been traveling around the oceans for decades, making all kinds of incredible discoveries, including being the person who found the wreck of the Titanic, which is pretty cool. But it goes on and on from there. Different shipwrecks, different things underwater, like hydrothermal vents. Yeah, a very accomplished deep sea explorer. And so we left San Francisco. We sailed out under the Golden Gate Bridge. You can see San Francisco there in the background. And there's just another shot, leaving San Francisco behind and heading out into the ocean. So as a scuba diver, I haven't gone much below 150, 160 feet. That's the deepest that I've ever gone. If you train, you can dive even deeper to maybe 200, 300 feet. You have to do a lot of training. You have to breathe different mixes of gases, but that's about as far as we can go just scuba diving. So how do we get 3 and 4 kilometers deep? Well, we use these really cool underwater robots called remotely operated vehicles, or ROVs. So here, this one is called Hercules. This one weighs like 5,000 pounds. So that's why it's being lowered into the water on a crane. It is covered in cameras and lights and science gear, claws for taking samples, bottles that can take water samples. What else? It's got the little motors on board. Oh, I think the video might have froze though. Let me try and pause and unpause. There we go. It's got little cases that the samples can be put in. You can see this cord here. This cord has all the wires in that transfer the information back to the ship. And so this coil, this lead that's running from the ship is wound up on a big spool. It's over 4 kilometers long because that's how deep Hercules can go. There's a second ROV on board. This one's called Argus. Argus is a little bit different looking, and Argus is the companion to Hercules. So Argus is on a cord. You can see it at the front. It's attached to Hercules, and it floats above Hercules. It has a camera on board, so it can watch Hercules below, make sure it doesn't get tangled up in anything. It also, because you're on a ship and the ship is moving up and down, it moves up and down so that it takes that up and down movement so Hercules stays nice and steady on the bottom. So there's a little bit of slack in the rope between the two of them. So Argus moves up and down with the waves, but Hercules doesn't move at all. Stays nice and steady at the bottom so we can get some really good footage. Here was where we were exploring. This is the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary. You can see San Francisco all the way up at the top. That's where we left. And then down here is Davidson Seamount down here at the bottom. It's an extinct volcano. That's where we were exploring. Why were we doing it? Well, we have better maps of the moon and Mars than we do of the bottom of our ocean right here on Earth. So we try to fill in those blanks to see what's living down there, to see what it's like 3, 4, 5 kilometers deep in the ocean, and to try and map these areas as well. So we can fix that problem of having better maps of the moon and Mars than we do of our own oceans. So here is it's a pictogonin is what it's called, but it also has a nickname of a sea spider. And I think you can see why it gets that nickname. It looks kind of like a spider here on the bottom of the ocean. And then you might be wondering about these two little lasers. These lasers are 10 centimeters apart, and we shine them on the organism so we can get an estimate of how big they are. So if this is 10 centimeters apart, we could put it probably 1, 2, 3 times on this pictogonin. So we know it's about 30 centimeters or a ruler across. It's a little bit, makes the pilots of the ROVs nervous. They sit in the control van on the ship, and it's like they have a joystick, a controller that they're using to control things. It's like playing a video game. But here is a fishing net that sank to the bottom. And so they have to be very careful, the ROV pilots, not to get the ROV tangled in a fish net on the bottom of the ocean. It would not be easy to get Hercules back if it got tangled 3 or 4 kilometers down at the bottom of the ocean. Now, there's constantly something called marine snow falling to the bottom. That's nutrients that fall from the top of the ocean and they sink like snow down to the bottom. And it can be bigger things, even the size of a whale that dies and sinks to the bottom. And that's a huge opportunity for the bottom dwellers in the deep sea to eat. And here we have some sea pigs and some sea urchins, and they are feeding on a piece of kelp that sank from the surface and sank down to the bottom. So they're all around this piece of kelp, and they're eating this piece of kelp there on the bottom. There's cool fish like this. This is a lizard fish. It has no color because it's totally dark down there. The color can't be seen. It's pretty much blind because, again, it can't hunt with its eyes. But that little line you see running down its bottom, it's called a lateral line. That helps it detect movement and changes in pressure in the water. And it's an ambush predator. So it's got that big gulping mouth. If something swims over top, it will become a tasty meal for this fish down at the bottom of the ocean. Even though no humans been here before, we still saw lots of evidence of humans. Pop cans, paint cans, balloons, fishing nets, garbage that had been discarded at the surface. It makes its way down into the deep ocean to places we haven't seen before. So here's a Dr. Pepper can, and there's a sea bristle, and a sea urchin hanging out around this Dr. Pepper can. Now, we have a team of scientists who sit in the control van, and they're watching the videos live, and they are pointing out things that they want to collect, to bring up to the surface to study. And so Hercules has 2 arms that it can use to grab things, like it's grabbing this sponge here, this sea sponge on a stalk. So it's taking this sample, and it's going to put that sample into a container. We can also use a vacuum hose. We call it a slurp. So that we can grab this vacuum hose with the Hercules claw and then slurp up a sample that might be a little bit softer. So that's what's happening here. We're slurping up a sample to bring back up to the top. And then here's the sample boxes. That black one on the front is where we can put things like rocks to bring up to the surface. And then there's this other box here that we can open and close, and we can put in samples like this cryanid that we're putting a sample into the box right now. And there is a lot of life on the bottom of the ocean. You might not know that because we don't get to see it, but just in this picture alone, there's some bristle stars, some deep sea coral, an acorn worm, sea cucumber, sea anemone. So just in that one picture, we're seeing many different species here on the bottom of the ocean. And some of my favorite were the octopus. I believe this is their scientific name is Musoctopus robustus, I think, for this one. And so I'm going to show you a video in a second because we made a really cool discovery with these octopuses on the bottom of the ocean. And then we have this here, this cusk eel. So this cusk eel has those little whiskers on the bottom, which can help it sense things in the environment. And if you look again, you can see those lines, those lateral lines that run along their body. That helps them sense things in the deep dark under the water, which is pretty cool. Now, Hercules takes cool pictures, but Hercules also takes amazing videos. So I want to show you this first video here now. Yeah, so we're about 3,000 meters deep, 3,300 meters deep, so over 3 kilometers. And for some reason, the volume is kind of funny on this one. So maybe I'll turn the volume off and I'll just talk over this one if it'll let me turn the volume off. It's playing kind of slow today. I might not be able to. Let me see. There's the mute. Ha, perfect. So I will tell you about what we're seeing here. This is, you may have seen this before. This is sometimes called a Dumbo octopus. It's sometimes called an umbrella octopus. And you're going to see why in a second. It's going to show off a little bit. But I think you can see the Dumbo name. Those fins up there, those aren't ears like the big elephant in the Disney movie. They are fins that help it move through the water. And when we see something like this, it's always very exciting, but we have no idea if this is rare. We have no idea if this is common. We just don't know. We only get these little pictures, these little glimpses when we take these vehicles underwater. And so I think you can see now why it gets the nickname umbrella octopus as well. So when it spreads out those arms, they're all connected, forming kind of that big umbrella. Now I think it's just showing off a little bit. That's pretty cool. So yeah, we have no idea if this is rare or if it's happening all the time in the deep sea. If there's millions of them or if there's only a few thousand, we just don't know. We still have a lot of research to do. So that was pretty cool. And then I told you that we saw something else with the octopus. Let's get to this next video. I'm going to make sure I turn the volume off because it's not cooperating today. So we had been diving with Hercules and Argus for almost 40 hours straight. And it was time to bring them back up to the surface. But just before we did, we saw these octopus, about a dozen of them, turned upside down. And we thought that was kind of weird. So we went in a little closer to take a look. And if you look closely, you can see they're protecting eggs. So these are probably female octopuses. They're flipped upside down, protecting their eggs in the deep ocean. But then we noticed there were more. And the more we went along the seamount, we found first a dozen, 2 dozen, 100, 1,000, thousands and thousands of these octopus protecting or brooding their eggs on the bottom of the ocean. They may be doing this for 2 or 3 years, protecting their eggs on this seamount. So this is Hercules. Argus is looking down. That second ROV is looking down from above. And as we went along here, we called this the octopus garden. More and more came into view until we realized we were looking at the world's largest, deepest colony of brooding octopus. No one had ever seen something like this before. And we broadcast this live to the world at the same time that we were seeing it. So that was pretty cool. And as you can see, they just stretch on and on and on. And we were curious, why here? You can see they're kind of in cracks that run along the bottom of this extinct volcano. This seamount used to be a volcano. And so we didn't have a temperature gauge on board the ROV, but we got in really close with the cameras. And what we noticed is the water in those little cracks was shimmering. And that means it's a little bit warmer than the water above. So there must still be some heat coming from within the earth. And that's why the octopus chose to be here, because that little bit of heat gives them an advantage. Their eggs will hatch a little bit faster with that little bit of extra heat. So that's why these thousands and thousands and thousands of octopus chose this seamount to be where they're brooding their eggs. And they're going to spend 2 or 3 years doing this. And if you look really closely in this video clip, I think we're going to get a little bit closer. You should be able to see that shimmering that we could see in the water. And that is heat being released from the earth through the rocks, through this extinct volcano, this extinct seamount. Very cool. All right. I think I might have one or two more slides to share with you. So here's just a picture of Hercules looking at the seamount, and you can see Argus is above, taking this picture, taking that video. If you look really carefully, you can see the cord that connects the two of them. So if we're wavy up top, Argus is going to be bouncing up and down a little bit, but because Hercules isn't directly connected to the ship, it stays nice and steady there on the bottom. While I was on the ship, we had this room where we could do live connections with classrooms. So we would come down to this room, we do our live connections. The last few days we were on the ocean, it got really, really rough. And this is what happened all over the ship. It got smashed up pretty good. The seas got really rough. Everything that wasn't tied down all over the ship. There was breaking glass and things like that. It got pretty rough for a few days. So let me just give you that comparison. This is how the room should look. And this is what the room looked like during those rough seas. And then here's what it looked like being on deck during those rough seas. Let me play this. So this was the next day. So the weather had calmed down, but the seas were still very unsettled. So watch how far it dips one way. And then watch how far the ship will dip the other way. So imagine that for days and days. You just kind of get used to it. But it definitely makes you think about where you place everything. And so you don't lose some of your valuable stuff like cameras and things like that. So you have to be pretty careful. And then sometimes the ocean's really quiet. And then other times it explodes into life. Like here, we've got a pod of dolphins surrounding the ship. So all those splashes you see, that's dolphins jumping in the water. There's hundreds of them racing along with the ship. So for days, you can see nothing but blue ocean. It feels like a desert. Then all of a sudden, you have 300-400 dolphins around you for a minute, and then they disappear again. So it's pretty cool. You never know what to expect when you're out there on the ocean. And then the last video, a little bit of fun. It was Halloween at this time. So we had our undersea costumes. There's anglerfish, mermaids. And then my son, Finn, he really likes Pokemon. So I had a Pikachu costume, but I put a scuba mask on it. So it was Scuba Chew instead of Pikachu. So that was my costume on board the ship. I was Scuba Chew for Halloween. So we have fun on board the ship as well. It's not all science. So that's what I want to share with you today, that little bit of an experience. And then I think we have time that we can squeeze in a quick Kahoot quiz if you guys want to play along on a quick Kahoot quiz. So I am going to stop my screen share. I am going to move this Kahoot quiz up to the front of my screen. And I should probably hit start on it. That's going to make it a little bit easier. And then let's play a quick Kahoot quiz together, and let's see who comes out on top. So you should see my screen loading right now. And if you are lucky enough to have something at your desk, maybe you have a tablet or a Chromebook, you could join that way. The website is kahoot.it. And then there's a PIN number, 8480, and that'll bring you right in. If you don't have something at your desk, your teacher could pop this up at the front of the classroom. You could shout out your answers to him or her. If you're at home, I know we have homeschool students joining us each time we have a World's Most Exciting Classroom. You can scan that QR code with your phone. Otherwise, if you can't join with technology, no big deal. Play along anyways and join us. So while I'm waiting, I see a couple questions here in the chat about how big was that Dumbo octopus. I would say it was probably, when it spread out its arms, that it was maybe about 3 feet across. And then lengthwise, I'm just trying to think about what that laser looked like on its body. I bet it was probably somewhere between 3 or 4 feet in length, which is pretty cool. What type were the nesting ones? Those are, I don't know their common name, but I believe they're called Musoctopus robustus. is their scientific name. I don't know their common name off the top of my head. I just remember the scientific name because the scientists were saying that over and over and over again. They were really cool. Excited to see that. Okay, let's get this Kahoot going. It looks like things have slowed down. So let's play a quick round because we still actually have a little bit more to do today. And I'll tell you about that after the Kahoot. So first question coming your way. Which ocean was this deep sea expedition in? Was it the Atlantic, the Indian, the Pacific Ocean, or the Arctic? So we know that Oosterschelde is in the Atlantic Ocean. And I'm not saying that I wasn't there, but which do you recall it being? Atlantic, Indian, Pacific, or the Arctic? And it looks like I typed so fast I spelt it Attic. But it is supposed to be the Arctic. So yes, it's the Pacific Ocean was where I was. California is on the coast of the Pacific Ocean. Okay, that puts the Agile crane in first place. We have a true or false coming your way. The lasers on the ROV, they're 20 centimeters apart. Is that true or false? That the lasers on the ROV were 20 centimeters apart. True or false? Got about 9 seconds to get your answers in. All right, good job, crew. It is false. They're 10 centimeters apart. We could adjust it, but for this expedition, they were set at 10 centimeters apart. The silly duck has taken first spot. We've got another question coming your way. Argus. How deep could Argus dive to? Was it 1,000 meters, 2,500 meters, 4,000 meters, or do you think Argus could dive to as deep as 6,000 meters? So what do you think? 1,000, 2,500, 4,000 meters, or 6,000 meters? All right, we had a spread there, but Argus can actually go up to 6 kilometers deep. We don't do that as often because Hercules can only go to 4,000. And Argus usually dives as a team member with Hercules. But if we wanted to just use Argus, it could go to 6,000 meters. One more question coming your way. The Royal Kitten is in first place. True or false? We have better maps of the moon and Mars than of our own ocean. True or false? We've got better maps of the moon and Mars than we do of our very own ocean. And I know some people say oceans, but I always just say ocean because they're all connected. There's no barriers between the oceans. But because we like geography, we give them their different names in different parts of the world. But that is absolutely true. We have way better maps of the moon and Mars than we do of our own ocean. I think we're only at about 20% of the seafloor being properly mapped. Only about 20%. So there we go. In third place, we had the glowing elephant. In second place, the agile crane. And in first place, the silly duck sneaking back into that top spot. Very cool. If you are the classroom with the silly duck, I need you to send me an email. Send me an email to classroom@darwin200.com. I'm going to put that up on the screen really quickly. If your classroom contains the silly duck, send that email to classroom@darwin200.com, and we have an Amazon gift card for your classroom for playing along with us. So send me an email, classroom@darwin200.com, if your class has the silly duck in it. Okay, so I should take a few questions. Let's see if we have any questions. Let's start with Miss Abel's crew this time because we started the other way, and see if Ms. Abel's crew has any questions for us about the deep sea.
We do have a question. Hey, guys.
Perfect.
Shooting us a question, please. Hey. All right.
What was the smallest sea creature you've seen?
The smallest. That has to be plankton and zooplankton, because they're just, for the most part, they're just single cells. So you can't get much smaller than that. But even though they're really small, they are the base of the food chain in the ocean. So they play a huge role in the ocean. So I would say plankton and zooplankton. And my favorite is when you dive at night and you wave your hands in the water and you get a bioluminescence fireworks show. Because when they're startled, the dinoflagellates, which is a type of zooplankton, they get startled and they emit this tiny little blue-green light. So when you're diving underwater, and if you're in the right spot, you get to see a light show in the dark, which is pretty cool. Okay, very cool. Great question. Looks like another one. Yeah, go for it.
Does plankton have one eye?
So unlike SpongeBob, where plankton does have one eye, they don't have eyes. Not like us. Some of the really small organisms can sense light. So whether a shadow falls over them, that kind of warns them that there might be a predator nearby. And then some are larvae of like crabs and things like that. So they have really tiny eyes that are just developing, but not like plankton in SpongeBob.
Okay.
All right,
Thank
thanks,
you.
bud. All right. Okay, Miss Coburn's crew. Let's grab a couple from you guys.
Hi, how we doing? Does anyone want to put their mic on and ask the question? No. Okay, got it. No problem. So we as we were watching your video, and we have another chat going here. We were wondering about. There we go. Just live, and we were wondering about. It looks like it's a huge team effort, and you have a lot of people involved in what you're doing. We were just wondering, how do you get that team together?
Yeah. So on that ship, what's really cool about ocean exploration is you don't have to be a scientist to join in. We've got ROV pilots who pilot the ROV. We have engineers who take care of the ship and the equipment. We have people doing social media and science communication. There's the cook on board. There's the crew on the ship. There are so many different careers. There's artists on board who draw what we see and things like that. So there are tons of different careers that you could have and still be an ocean explorer. And to be honest, the crew on the Nautilus, some of them have been there for years. So part of building that crew is having good people on board and keeping them and having them come back year after year. Every year, the ship puts out calls for young people to come on board and be interns in science communication, in technology, in piloting ROVs, in navigators. And so those interns learn skills and then can come and become a part of the crew afterwards. And then some of it is just the old-fashioned way, putting out a call. We need scientists. We need cooks. We need engineers and mechanics on board. And people can apply and then come on board and become members of the crew.
Cool. And we noticed on the DARWIN200 website, there is a link. It says you can go that says join the crew. Is that's another area that you can go to?
Yeah, so that's probably more for our Darwin leaders. In every port we visited, we flew usually about 5 young Darwin leaders. So young 18 to 25-year-olds who had shown a real commitment to conservation already. Maybe they started their own organization. Maybe they've been doing things in their community. And so they would come out to the ship. We'd pair them up with groups in the field, and they'd work in the field, create videos, and then share those with the world. And the hope is that as each one of them returns to their countries, they'll bring those new skills home with them, and they'll be conservationists working in their communities for the next 30, 40, even 50 years. So that's the Darwin leaders that we bring out. And we'll have a new group, 2 groups of them will come and join us over our time in Cape Town. So we're really excited for that.
That's an amazing ripple effect. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
All right. Thank you. So as per usual, we're running long. We're at our hour, which is how long we usually go. If classrooms need to log off and sign out, don't feel bad. Feel free to continue your day. What I'm going to do is play our experiment and our curiosity. So you can come back either to the Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants YouTube channel or the DARWIN200 YouTube channel. You can check out the experiment. You can check out the curiosity of the week, and you can try them in your classroom for a chance at a prize. If you want to stick around, you're welcome to. I'm going to share those videos. Otherwise, you'll be able to find them in the recording as well. So every week we have a new experiment. And 2 weeks ago, we had our experiment powering a light with lemons. So let's take a look at the results of that experiment together. Just give me a second to make the video play, and we should see it now.
Welcome back, everyone. Could you get your lemons to create electricity and make your LED glow? Could you work out what's happening in this experiment and where the electrical current is coming from? Well, the 3 lemons work as a battery to create electricity. Each lemon works as an electrochemical cell. Chemical energy stored in the strips of copper and zinc are converted into electrical energy, and that's what powers the little LED. 3 lemons are needed in order to make the current strong enough to make the LED glow. Differences in the chemical properties of the strips of copper and zinc cause tiny particles called ions that are charged with electricity to flow between the strips, and this flow is called an electrical current. Differences in the chemical properties between the strips of copper and zinc cause tiny particles called ions that are charged with electricity to flow between the strips, and this flow is called an electrical current. The copper and zinc strips are called electrodes, and the liquid within the lemon works as an electrolyte, enabling the flow to go between the strips. The current then passes through these wires to power the LED and make it shine. And that's how these 3 lemons can cause this little LED to glow. How did you get on? Could you make your LED glow just like mine?
All right, so there we go. That was our experiment. I have a couple classrooms who sent me in some of the results, so I'm going to send them some some gift cards. But I do want to give a shout out to Miss Roll's crew in the UK, because I know they're online right now. They tried the experiment. It didn't work quite as well as they had hoped, because I think they might have had an issue with their wires. So they didn't get the LED to light, but they did give it a try. So we'll send them a gift card as well. So very cool. Thank you so much for trying that out with us. And then, so the next thing we're going to do is our new experiment. If you want to try this one, you have 2 weeks to try this brand new experiment. Send us in some pictures trying that experiment. And then we just might have a gift card for your classroom. So here's our new experiment.
Welcome back, everyone. This week's curiosity is this little object here. Can you work out what this is? It's obviously a fossil, but what type of fossil? What organism is visible here? Look very carefully at the structure of this fossil. Does that pattern remind you of anything? Send in your best guess to classroom@darwin200.com for a chance to win an Amazon gift voucher prize. Good luck in guessing, and thank you for taking part.
Okay, I'm sure you just realized that was not our new experiment. I played our new curiosity, which I was saving till the end. But there it is. That is our new curiosity of the week. Every week we have a curiosity. You have 1 week to send in your best guess. For a chance, we give out 1 Amazon gift card to a classroom that sends in their best guess for their curiosity. So what do you think that curiosity is? Let's try this again and see if I can get the right new thing up. Not the new curiosity. We want our brand new experiment, and this is it.
Welcome back, everyone. In today's experiment, you can create your very own miniature greenhouse, known as a terrarium, in order to grow beautiful tropical plants. We take it for granted that tropical plants are all around us. You might have some at home, or perhaps at school on your windowsill. But have you ever thought how tropical plants came to grow in temperate areas right the way around the world? Transporting tropical plants in the early 19th century wasn't easy. Ships sailing around the planet would often carry a cargo of beautiful tropical plants. But the problem was that these voyages would often take many months. The plants would simply dry up or die in the cold conditions or being splashed by salty seawater. In 1842, a man called Nathaniel Ward had a brilliant idea. He created a simple little glass box, which became known as a Wardian case. This miniature little greenhouse kept in the warmth and humidity and protected the tropical plants from salt water in the extreme conditions on a ship. And this dramatically increased the rate of survival for plants to be transported around the world and grown in greenhouses in cold, temperate areas. Even if you don't live in a tropical country, you can grow your very own beautiful tropical plants at home. You can create your very own miniature greenhouse, known as a terrarium. Terrariums are really fun and easy to make. If you've got a really large glass jar, such as this one, you can use that. Or, if you don't, you can make your very own one out of a see-through plastic bottle. The bigger the better. This is about 1.5 litres, so try and get one this size or larger. With the help of a responsible adult, you first need to cut the bottle about 1/3 of the way up, so around here. This can be a bit tricky. Be very careful with the scissors. There we go, and just cut all the way around. So you should end up with a smaller section and a larger section. In the larger section, make a little slit a few centimetres up. That slit will enable it to fit neatly on top. There you go, you have your very own little terrarium ready to go. And next comes the fun bit. You've got to think about which plants to plant inside your terrarium. Remember, you mustn't plant plants that will grow too big, so be very careful which ones you select. Many garden centres sell small plants such as these very cheaply, but you can also easily take cuttings from tropical plants at home or at school. Make your selection, put in some soil into your terrarium and get planting. Join me next week and I'll plant these plants into these 2 terrariums. Good luck in getting your terrarium set up and see you next time.
All right. Well, 2 weeks if you want to try and build your own terrarium. You could build one in the classroom, which would be kind of cool. Or you can try one at home. And it's as simple as taking something like a pop container. There's like the 2-liter pop bottles, carefully cutting it, and then planting inside. And in 2 weeks from now, we'll see the results video where Stu will show you the terrariums that he created. And then if we have a few submissions, some pictures sent in from classrooms, we'll share some of those as well. Well, the last thing we need to do, since we saw a new experiment, we saw our new curiosity, we have to look at the answer to last week's curiosity. So this should come up right now. Here we go.
Back everyone. Last week, I asked you to try and identify these strange objects here. If you remember, they had a very unusual texture. Could you work out what these are? A few of you wrote in and suggested that they were meteorites, but that isn't correct. Believe it or not, these are fossils of ancient corals that once lived in prehistoric seas. If you look really carefully, you'll see all these holes. This is where the coral polyps, that's the coral animals, lived. If you look at the skeleton of a modern coral, such as this one, you'll see exactly the same structure with the same holes where the coral polyps live. In this example, the holes are much smaller, but the structure is very similar and shows that corals haven't changed much over millions of years, because this particular example is thought to be over 300 million years old. Could you identify this correctly as a piece of ancient fossilized coral?
Okay, so a new curiosity from last week. It ended up being a fossil of ancient coral, 300 million years old. Very cool. Well, if you are going to try the new curiosity, if you are going to try the experiment, you've got 1 week for the curiosity, 2 weeks for the experiment. Send in some photos to classroom@darwin200.com. We'll keep an eye out for those. And then we need to wrap things up for today because we are 10 minutes over schedule. Not surprising. This has happened several times before because we always jam so much into these world's most exciting classroom events. The last thing we're going to do is a shout out to our sponsors, our supporters, our partners, without whom we wouldn't be sailing towards South Africa right now. We wouldn't have our young Darwin leaders joining us in port to learn new conservation skills. Grant wouldn't be on board doing research like the Seabird survey. And we wouldn't be here right now doing the world's most exciting classroom. So a huge shout out to our sponsors, our partners, our supporters. We absolutely couldn't do it without you. And yeah, a shout out to our classrooms. Thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you for your great questions. Thanks for playing Kahoot. Thanks for sending in experiment and curiosity results. It's always fun to see what's happening in your classrooms. For now, we're going to say goodbye. We will be back next week with another world's most exciting classroom. Thanks, everyone.